Good morning, it's Monday, January 28th, 2019, 9 a.m. This is the Muscatine County Board of Supervisors. I'd like to call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is to review the agenda.
So moved.
I have a motion by Scott, second by Doug. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Item number 3 is receive comments from the public. Is anyone from the public here wishing to speak? Seeing no one come forward, we'll move to item number 4, discussion of possible action to approve claims dated January 28th, 2019 in the amount of $350,348.36.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion by Scott, second by Santos. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Items with the county engineer Keith White. Item number 5A, discussion of possible action to award the bid for BRIS swap CO7065FE70, a bridge replacement project on 155th Street, just west of Elder Avenue. The replacement structure is a twin 12 by 10 by 48 foot reinforced concrete box culvert. Keith.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
These are the bid tabs as they come from the DOT, okay? As they come from the DOT. They're changing the way they're doing things a little bit. But just. Thank you. If there's ever a chance that I'm gonna recommend we not award, then, you know, I'll give you a heads up. But basically, the DOT, these numbers are not public unless we award a contract. And the DOT, their estimate, which is really our estimate, used to always be theirs, and we would never know. But nowadays, well, I guess we have an idea what it is, because they ask for our input, which they used to not. But they never give out their estimate ever. So if anybody wants it, I can tell you what we think, what we thought, but the DOT never gives out their estimate because they feel it provides advantages to people. So as you can see, the red low and DOT is recommending for award is Iowa Bridge and Culvert, which they've had a lot of projects here lately. And we had, as you see in the summary, there were 5 bids. A couple of them were in line with what we think the project should cost. So I would certainly recommend award.
You would recommend the award to Iowa Bridge and Culvert?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Have we used them before?
Yes, they've
Do lots of them.
their box culvert works, one of their real specialties, and they've done a number of projects for us, including last year.
Have a motion?
Well, I'd make a motion to approve the bid to Iowa Bridge and Culvert for the amount of $288,289.70.
I have a motion by Scott, second by Doug.
One last question. If it is awarded, when would they start?
No idea is the answer. What happens when we award it, and I wanted to speak under this item anyway, the DOT has changed how we handle our documents to all electronic. This is it's really brand new. We've got like 27 pages of instructions, which we have read through and think we understand, but aren't sure we understand. We've posed our questions to the DOT. We don't have any answers yet. Normally in the past, Santos, the way it would happen is once you would award it here, we would actually send out the contracts and the contractor would sign them. They got 30 days to sign them. They would send them out. We would send them out. They would sign them. They would get their bond and their insurance certificate, their subcontracts. They would send them all back to us, and then those documents would come here to the board for approval. That's when we'd actually have a contract. The late start date on this, the late start is August 26th with 50 working days. This one's early enough. I would only be speculating, but I would speculate they will start in the spring. Whenever they start, their working days start. So those aren't calendar days, those are suitable days to work, so they have 50 days to build it. I'd expect this one to get built sometime this summer, but obviously they could come as late as August, the end of August to start. And typically, even when we get contract back, we don't know till we have a pre-construction meeting with them, and then they tell us what they think their schedule is. Anyway, we will have to establish an electronic signature, and the information says it can only be on one device, period. So I want further clarification. You know, are we going to have to set up the chair, and every year when the chair changes, change it? Or are we going to set up the county engineer to be able to electronically sign when the board approves it? Anyway, whoever does that, when we get that established and we initiate the contract, then that makes the contracts electronically available to the, it's not signed, it's electronically available to the contractor, who will then sign it and upload all the other relevant documents, which the DOT will then review and then come back to us and say, okay, you can now decide to sign it. It's,
And that's the DOT's new requirements for,
there is no option. Yeah, that's
For
their new
electronic.
requirements.
and that's because we're getting funded from the DOT for this culvert?
This one is farm to market and federal aid bridge swap money that really becomes our money. It sets in a pot of names, but they're writing the checks for us. And so there are no options. We can't say. I look at this initially and I'm going, it looks like it's 10 times more burdensome to do this electronically than the old way.
Is this the first we've done of this?
It's the first letting that it's been required of anybody to do this January letting.
We'll work through it, Nancy, I'm sure we'll have questions.
So,
Thank you.
So I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Projects update. Keith, do you have some update for us this morning?
not a lot to say there other than obviously, you know, there isn't any construction going on. And we had this project, which we just let, we have another bridge in the March letting coming up. And they continue to work on sort of some of the same things they were, G28, right-of-way acquisition, having designs all done there, and working on the Iron City bridge elimination new road project.
How's that G28 right away coming? Is it moving forward or finally, or
It's
still stalemate?
Well, it's crawling forward, it's moving forward, and maybe it will pick up steam here soon. But we basically can't get to letting on that until we have right away. We had one entity, just to show you how right-of-way acquisition goes, we know where we think the difficulty challenges might lie, but we had one entity where there should be no challenge, but the person lives out of state, they've been cheated over by the Maryland DOT or somebody, and they just absolutely are not going to, you know, give us an easement, and got to explain to them, all we're asking is a temporary, that during construction, we might touch them and put it back if we do, and then it goes away, and then they decided they were okay. But, you know, you couldn't see that coming from right up close, you couldn't see that one coming. But that's what you run into. So that's sort of the status on projects.
Okay. How about roads?
Other, just wanted to note, you know, running a lot of hours. I would say this winter is close to as bad as in the 21 years I've been here. Amazingly, I think the complaints reduced during this last go around, but there are still people that, you know, we had people that nobody's ever been there. You know, the roads are horrible. We live on a dead end, but we should be first. And the nobody's have never been there is just not fact at all. But you know, you're in conditions out there that an hour later you might think nobody's been there.
With that drifting we had when that wind came in on Friday, could be tough places.
And as you know, we've got colder, more difficult temperatures coming. So overall, I think the guys, you know, Scott observed the last storm around. I think the guys have done a really good job.
You know, once again, I've been all over this county in this situation over the weekend and so on and so forth. I think they've done a fantastic job overall. A fantastic job. And, you know, coming in this morning, we got freezing rain just a little bit when I was coming in, and temperatures are gonna plunge this afternoon into the night. And, there's some real challenges out there, and, I just don't think that the majority of the public understand the complexity of this. Right. And I think the crew does a wonderful job from what I've seen this winter so far. They've worked a lot of hours.
A lot of hours. I think I think the average on this last week was probably about 22, 25 hours of overtime. And I also wanted to observe, you know, our snow policy is in the Code of Ordinances. You may or may not wish to review that at some point in time and see what it says we do. Normally, we provide a service that has been well above what our ordinance calls for. But when it gets to conditions like this, and that's coming, we'll look more like what our policy says. Our policy does not say that we're going to have clear, dry pavement. And it doesn't say that we run 24 hours, because we don't. So, and it tells you the sequence of operations. It's a very standard document adopted by all the counties years ago with slight variations. I think the only thing that we do that's a bit of an exception on ours is it speaks to mailboxes. Pretty much says, you know, if you don't hit a mailbox, we're not taking care of it, but we have taken care of a lot of mailboxes this winter, a lot of them. And I guess I'm thinking, you know, you'd probably rather we did that than get the call over $100. But we also get calls on state highways that we've hit mailboxes and that we haven't plowed, and And, you know, lots of folks don't seem to understand what roads are ours, and we get calls in the city too, I'm sure they get them on our roads. So we try and politely explain to them who they need to talk to.
I don't think they understand what's 52 below with wind chill, but hydraulics don't work.
Right.
Machines, it's death on a machine to even have it out there.
Yeah.
Are we preparing, or do you know any things that we need to do as far as with potentials this Wednesday coming in, as far as those trucks? Do we have block heaters, do we have, or planning on trying not to move those at all?
Well, you know, the forecast,
I mean, it sounds like.
I'm not
Wednesday's
sure
gonna be really bad.
what there might be to deal with on that day, but yeah, they all have block heaters. They're all housed in an unheated garage, but heated can sometimes cause problems too.
And that's fine, I just wanted to make sure that we were potentially, if we were gonna see any use, or hopefully minimal use on Wednesday if possible.
Yeah, you know, I don't expect us to be running, but if the conditions warrant, then they'll probably have to be out there too. So,
Well, you know, that spit of rain that we had this morning is gonna help to seal that blowing snow up a little bit. And, to my knowledge, we're not to have, much more of a snow event
Right.
going into the cold, so, if they get this feathered up, I don't think we're gonna have the blowing issues to deal with, and it might work out, in my mind, it might work out fairly well, Santos, in regard to the amount of machine time on the road, when it's incredibly cold, might not have to run it at all when it's that hard on equipment and operators.
right,
That'd be my thought.
Your transport's down are incredible.
Oh,
right.
Temperature and working on something out on the road.
Stay home if you
Pretty
need it.
difficult.
Yeah.
Yep, be smart. Okay, anything else, Keith?
that's all I have.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 6 is a department update with Community Services Director Kathy Anderson-Knoll. Morning, Kathy.
Good morning.
Which, by the way, Lori Elam will not be coming this morning because of the weather.
Yeah, well, I figured as much.
And she will reschedule with us too as soon as possible,
Great.
but they're, up in the Quad Cities, there's a towing ban in effect, so if she would happen to get stuck, as she said, she'd probably stay there till spring, so we don't want that. Okay, so an overview of our financials at Community Services at the end of December. Our mental health budget, 2019 year-to-date expenditures are at $638.86, and we're at 37.67% with a target of 50%. We have received 3 of our payments from the region of $190,202 each, which now is totaling $576.06. We have 1 more payment expected, which would total $768.08. So we're on target with our budget. Our general assistant budget, our year-to-date expenditures are $210,731, with a target currently at 46.04% with a target of 50. You know, we're budgeting for FY20, looking at where we're going to be with fund balance, and you know, we are going to be below the 20, around the 20% as of FY19. Our fund balance is going to be $338,785, which will put us, you know, in a good place for Senate File 504. However, if you listen to the governor's speech last week, or 2 weeks ago, I'm sorry, she did indicate that they were going to look at Senate File 504 and look at extending that timeout that regions have to spend their fund balance down to 20%, which is a good thing. However, our region, we are definitely on track to be at that 20% because we did the one-time funding grants to providers so that they could meet the requirements for, you know, the required core services. Just a brief legislative update. From the interim committee report, which I gave you, provided a copy for you, there's no long-term funding solution for mental health right now, but that is to be a legislative priority. So we'll see where that goes. You know, mental health has always been kind of like this. And, you know, that's not sustainable. What we've got going on right now is not sustainable. So we're hoping that our legislators look at things for mental health funding, because you can't require a lot of new services without providing some funding. The big concern that we have is the implementation of a children's system and responsibility coming down to regions to start funding a lot of those services and implementing those services. And as we know, implementing new services can be expensive, and it's also, you know, takes time to get up to the level of being able to provide the service. We're also looking at, even though the government shutdown is now ended until February, we've been working on planning for that event and how it's affecting our folks with SNAP benefits, which are food stamps, and our Section 8 program. If the shutdown had continued, funding for those services wouldn't be in effect for March payments. Now, what they've done for food assistance for February is they've released payments early to folks. And again, that could be problematic as well because, you know, sometimes our folks utilizing those types of benefits, budgeting is not a strong suit for them. So one of the things that has been put together is just some information on how to stretch those benefits, and we're handing those out to people that we see in our office for general assistance. You know, make those benefits last, utilize a food pantry if you need to come in, and we'll look at eligibility for food vouchers and grocery sacks. So we're getting that word out to people. For the Section 8 payments, you know, depending on where this thing goes, as long as they appropriate money for federal Section 8 for the HUD benefits, landlords will continue to get paid, but it's a possibility that if there's not money appropriated for HUD, which comes down to communities in terms of Section 8s, if landlords aren't getting paid, we may see an increase in people coming to us for assistance. So I'll keep you posted on that. Right now, you know, government is back in business, and we'll see where this all goes. But I will keep you up to date on these things. But I just wanted to let you know that I've been meeting with public housing, with food pantry folks, with United Way, and we're working on contingency plans. Okay. Our regional management team, we are going to be working on an action plan to address the priorities set by our regional governing board following our strategic planning sessions. We're actually supposed to meet this afternoon, but that meeting's been canceled, thank goodness, so we don't have to make that trip up to Davenport today. Mental health first aid trainings around the region. There is a training scheduled for Scott County on the 30th, and in Jackson and Cedar counties in March 27th and 28th. Mental health first aid is a one-day training course available to anyone. It's free. Right now it's sponsored by Life Connections, which is the peer group that runs the Ronda's House up in DeWitt and the Eastern Iowa region. And, you know, I've taken the training. Many of my staff have taken the training, and I'll probably try to refresh myself with this training. The last time it was held in Muscatine has been a few years ago, and we held that out at the school board office. Tried to encourage a lot of educators to attend that training, but we did have a good crowd the last time we did it here. So we'll be looking to try to bring that training here again. We've got some good news as far as the peer drop-in center. Contracts are moving forward. One of the big things, frustrations we've had at a regional level with our crisis system has been contracts. And what happens is contracts get written, they go to Unity Point Legal, and they kind of sit there. So we've had a lot of meetings with Robert Young. Robert Young is working to push those contracts through, and they've given the go-ahead to Vera French and to MCSA to go ahead and start getting those peer drop-in center services going, and we're hoping to see that at MCSA later in the spring. Vera French has purchased a building for theirs and in Davenport, so they're looking to be up and running by April. So I'll keep you posted on that as well. In mental health, in December, we had 19 commitments. One was just straight mental health, and the rest were dual, which means dual substance use and mental health, which are often very, very closely related. So the good news is that all of those were able to stay within the region, except one which actually started in Johnson County. And sometimes we see that folks, may go up to an ER at the university or at Mercy in Iowa City rather than coming here and, for whatever emergency they have. And oftentimes the hospital will be the one that makes the decision to proceed with a commitment. Our commitment costs are a little high. Right now we're at 56.96%. Again, a lot of that's due to transportation. When we have to have people going across the state, that costs us because of the sheriff's transport time and just costs in mileage and that. We have a warm line for persons that's staffed by persons with lived mental health experience. It's available 7 days a week from 5 to 7 p.m. in all 5 counties of the region. And Vera French also has walk-in appointments for counseling that are available. I do have monthly meetings with our crisis team in Muscatine, which I have one tomorrow. We still have open positions in Muscatine that haven't been filled, and they do require a master's level, an LISW, which is hard to find. So I continue to push for those to be filled and for them to scour under every rock they can to find qualified people to fill these positions. We're also talking at a regional level about, okay, if you've got somebody in Scott County, can they come to Muscatine if we need them? The idea for these 2 positions, which is a justice-involved care coordinator and a dual substance mental health care coordinator, they were to be shared by Cedar and Muscatine, which makes sense because we're neighbors and Cedar County doesn't have that high a volume. But we're looking at, okay, if you can fill this position in Jackson and Clinton County and Scott County, can they come down here if we need them? So we're exploring that. Our prescriber bridge appointments, those are still being utilized. We were at 100% of attendance. We've dropped to 33%, but those are the emergency appointments for folks that have run out of medications and for whatever reason their prescriber won't see them. Maybe their prescriber's fired them, which happens, unfortunately. If you miss too many appointments or you're difficult to deal with, sometimes your provider says, I can't work with you anymore. So those are still available and they're being well utilized in Muscatine County. On our trust program, we're currently serving 234 active cases at the end of December, and trust services are a priority under our regional strategic planning. Local MCO update, a third managed care company is coming into Iowa starting July 1st. We have currently the 2 managed care companies for all of Iowa Medicaid, and those are AmeriGroup and United Health. A third one called Total Care Iowa, Centene, and Centene is the larger parent company. We don't have any information on this at this point on how current Medicaid recipients are going to be given a choice, if they're going to be automatically assigned to this third party and then given a choice, well, you don't have to go with them if you're happy with who you have, or giving all information to everyone from Medicaid and saying, we've got this third party, if you want to switch, you have the opportunity to do that. So I'm going to, be keeping tabs on that. Interestingly enough, I did get a phone call from this company wanting to know if we wanted to contract with them, which if you remember, some of you remember when we were doing case management, we did contract with AmeriHealth Caritas, who was the company that left Iowa to provide case management services. So, I asked this person a lot of these questions that I just covered with you. They didn't have the answer. And I'm like, what services did you think you're going to contract with us for? And they really didn't know. I explained, I said, so what about case management? Oh, well, we do that in-house. I said, okay, I guess we don't need to contract with you for anything. But, you know, I wasn't rude or anything, but it was interesting that they really didn't have any answers at this point, but they've already apparently started hiring staff in Iowa, or I don't know if she was in Iowa, she could have been from somewhere else. You know, but we'll keep you updated on that. Like I referenced the governor's State of the State address. She referenced lengthening the amount of time for regions to spend down their fund balances. But, you know, there's no addressing a long-term funding solution or the fact that our current levy limits throughout the state don't necessarily work for mental health services that are now being required. For our general assistance, in all of our general assistance, our unduplicated paid assistance was 76 for the month of December. And MCSA and United Way are also holding sessions for folks to go file their income taxes. We encourage people to look at that and to go and do, you know, file them on your own rather than going to some of these places that offer you, you know, a rapid refund loan. What it actually is it's a loan that they charge you a high rate of interest for, but you get your money like that day. So we are encouraging people, and other service agencies are encouraging people to, you know, file their taxes through a different way, and wait for your refund. You know, we know right now, refunds, we're not sure how quickly they're going to happen, but don't be trapped into these places that want to say, well, we're going to give you a loan for your refund, and then we're going to charge you a massive interest rate. So we're trying to get the word out on that. But MCSA has sessions available. And those are Tuesday, January 29th from 3 to 5, Wednesday, January 30th from 3 to 5, Tuesday, February 5th from 5 to 7, Tuesday, February 12th from 12 to 4, Wednesday, February 13th from 12 to 4, Monday, February 18th from 4 to 6, Tuesday, the 26th of February from 3 to 5, and Wednesday, the 27th from 3 to 5. So there's help out there available for folks, and there's no need for them to go someplace where basically they're going to get ripped off. Back to our assistance that we provided. We assisted 14 households with utilities in December, and we gave out 33 food pantry sacks in the month of December. We had 40 unduplicated households that we helped in some form or another with food assistance. Remember, we also provide a voucher so folks can go and get things like milk, eggs, you know, fresh meat, in addition to what's given out in the food pantry sacks and over at the food pantry. Our emergency food and shelter grant, Scott was at our meeting that we had in January. In phase 35, we were awarded $10,207, which was split between MCSA, the food pantry, and community services. So for our MCSA assistance, you know, we paid for 26 unduplicated folks, and what we paid for in December was $3,689, and that was largely offset by those emergency food and shelter funds for them. So that what we paid monthly for MCSA was a bit lower than we normally do. Questions?
I saw, maybe you sent it, I don't recall who sent it, the study committee. I saw Representative Carlson was on it. And I
The
saw
interim assistant, the interim committee report, yes.
And I saw that Lori was there speaking on our behalf, and I appreciate that, so thank her for me if you next time you see her. But do we have any idea where that committee is going, or where, have they given us any indications that they?
Yeah, well, they, you know, one of their priorities are a long-term funding solution and looking at, you know, increase in allowable fund balances, you know, extending that out, or maybe not, you know, putting a 20% cap on fund balance. What happens, you know, fund balance, what you carry over from the next year, that basically starts your year until September, when you start collecting taxes and you infuse more money into your system. So, whatever you end up as in a fund balance, that basically has to carry you through until you get more revenue in. So that's one issue. I know there's been some discussion about looking at sales tax as a way to fund mental health services. Right now, because of Senate File 504 and 2456, each region has a cap for their mental health levy, and they can't go above that cap, no matter what. And so each county within the region has the ability to set their levy, either at or below what that cap is. And for Muscatine County, it's 3078. Last year, our FY18 expenses for Muscatine County came in at about 3110 per capita. So, that's a little bit above the 3078. And we've looked at within our region, our expenses run a little high, largely because of our trust program, which, they do. Really, Scott County has a payee program, but nobody does the guardianship and conservator services like we do. And, we have started doing some of those for our counties in the region. We don't do it for outside of our region, just because everybody would be calling us and wanting us to do it. So as I discussed before, and you have asked me to put together a business plan, and I can hand that out to you today. I am working with our regional management team on that as well. It outlines us charging, the counties within our region for our services, which we, have already been able to do. We also charge our folks that are on Social Security benefits, if they can afford it, the allowable fee that Social Security allows us to charge. So, we're looking at that service as really becoming not a regional service. It'll be a service provided by Muscatine County, but one that the region supports. And I think, we've talked about that at length. But I have put together that business plan that you've asked, and I can hand that out to you today. It's still, it's not a done deal until you tell me it's a done deal, and the region also gives blessing. But, I have worked that out for you.
You made a comment on the fund balance, and I think one of the things that, we want to stress to our legislature, and I'll write a little note to Representative Carlson, but if I just look at your numbers here, our actual spend, we run from 1.5 to 2.1 million. That's a $600,000 swing year to year, and we're budgeting a year in advance. So that 30% fund balance is really just to take care of that that's 30% you'd need just to deal with the variation in the budget, yet alone timing of payments.
Right.
To manage cash flow. So, I think we probably need to take a longer term look at this, and I'd recommend the region do that. I know Nathan's not here today, but I'll send a note. I'll write some notes to Representative Carlson, because I have hope that we've got the right people on that committee, and that we're talking at least. It looks like at least they're serious about, and they understand the issues.
Yeah, they do, and I think it's been helpful. Lori's advocacy has certainly been helpful. I know you all have had conversations with Representative Carlson. I've had conversations with him as well, and I think he does understand and understands the urgency. Especially when the state continues to say, okay, you've got these new core services that have to be implemented by 2022, 2023, whatever the date is. And I will tell you that the intensive residential service homes, which is a core service, DHS is currently gathering data on that. Each county in our region submitted data to Lori on potential folks that we have identified that would benefit from this service. And those are people that traditionally aren't served well. Maybe in your 24-hour rehab homes, maybe they've been kicked out of those. They're folks that sit in the hospital for weeks, months at a time because no provider wants to take them on. We've got several of those. And Jeff, also, you mentioned how the budget can swing. If we get somebody that we have to pay for at MHI, that will definitely eat into our mental health budget rather quickly. Right. And if you get more than one person there, that's a very expensive service.
Yeah, I'm just not sure they're looking at this holistically.
Yeah.
I'll send some notes.
Okay, much appreciated. Anyone else?
Just one question, Kathy. You mentioned about the potential of the youth eventually being absorbed into your program.
Yes.
Do you have any potential estimates from, maybe what that could potentially impact our budget or?
Not really at this point, Mr. Cicito. Basically youth or anybody under the age of 18. And, we see kids under the age of 18 through our commitment process, and we do pay some of those costs. But in terms of services like supported community living, in-home type services for kids with mental health, previously when we did case management, we did children's mental health waiver. There's a very, very long waiting list for families to get their children on that service. And that provides some of those in-home services. So that's the Medicaid portion of it. But the non-Medicaid portion of it, would be looking at the region or being able to fund those kids until they can get to a Medicaid service. So right now, depending on what the required services are going to be for that program, if we have to pay for things like therapy, counseling, medication for kids either who can't get that through a family's insurance, can't get on Medicaid, it could be very costly, yes. But I don't have a dollar estimate at this point.
Say this is what we would be prepared for.
The thing I would think I would caution people, in my experience with parents and transitioning through this, when, there's not good integration between the child system and the adult system today.
No.
And there's a lot of times we're losing track of people as we have that happen. And so I think there's opportunity. I'm going to kind of support the idea of looking at it.
Yeah.
But I think they have to look carefully at the funding, because it's not like we're not doing it today.
Right.
It's where's the money coming from and how we're, because what you don't want to do is have all that burden fall on the county taxpayer.
Absolutely.
And then all of a sudden you release a bunch of money to somewhere else and they come up with more programs, because it's being paid for today. We have to figure out where those funds are,
Right.
and then try to make sure it stays with the service.
And there's a number of programs that we refer families for. Through DCAT, there's a grant that comes, it's a pass-through grant, and Lutheran Services in Iowa provides what's called Family Advocacy Program, and that provides some in-home services for families who aren't Medicaid eligible, whose, maybe insurance doesn't cover, and most insurance doesn't cover something like an in-home type service, where they're working on skills, usually working on personal skills, working on maybe they working on hygiene, just working on all of those things that contribute to, a kid with a mental health problem. Maybe they're not showering regularly. Maybe they don't know how to interact with their peers. And so that service is something that helps them work through some of those problems, which, yeah, you're right, it's already in effect. And it's a very small funding stream that comes down for that, and it's a limited number of kids that you can serve. But Jeff, I totally agree with you, that transition from, once you turn 18 to adulthood, because we've seen so many kids turn 18, and they no longer have to do anything, so they don't do anything, and then, we pick them back up at 23, 24, 25, and they're a total mess.
Yeah, there's a transition, I think the schools do a good job of identifying them and working with them, but then there's just that loss. We lose them after high school, we pick them back up when they're adults and already in trouble, and we had an opportunity probably to bridge that.
And we know a lot of mental health. I mean, we do see kids being diagnosed younger and younger with mental health issues, but we know a lot of your, bipolar, major depressive schizophrenia often hits in the early 20s.
Yeah.
Kids will be in college and doing well, and then all of a sudden, the mental health, the mental illness really manifests, and it's heartbreaking for families. Yeah. Okay. Other
Okay.
questions?
Thank you, Kathy.
Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and test this out to you. Again, it's preliminary, but peruse it and ask me questions, call me up, email me, whatever, and I'll be happy to try to answer anything for you, okay? All right, have a nice day. Stay warm.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
All right, so item number 7 on the agenda has been, she's had trouble with the weather, we'll reschedule that. Go to item number 8, which is canvasses various drainage district elections held on January 19, 2019 with Leslie Soul.
Okay, we have 4 more. We have Drainage District Number 1 trustee. They held their election on January 19th, 2019. It's, there were 4 votes cast. Russ Van Acker received 4 votes, so Russ Van Acker was elected for a term of 3 years. Drainage District Number 5 held their election on the 19th of January 2019. As for a trustee, there were 2 positions, 2 votes cast. Russ Van Acker again received 2 votes. He owns property in both drainage districts. Russ Van Acker was elected to a 3-year term. I must have skipped one, sorry. Drainage District Number 4 held their election on January 19th, 2019. There were 2 votes cast. Mike Myers received 2 votes. Mike Myers was elected to a 3-year term. And then Drainage District Number 9 held their election on January 19, 2019. There were 3 votes cast for trustee. Richard Levitinsky received 3 votes. Richard Levitinsky was elected to a term of 3 years. There is 1 drainage district left that has not turned in their paperwork yet because they forgot to file their publications, so they couldn't hold their election on the 19th, and until they can get their publications done, which is kind of a lengthy time, you have to publish 2, 1 week apart. Second one has to be at least 10 days before the election, so it's gonna be a couple weeks before we get theirs. I assume we'll have that in a few weeks, so. Other than that, that's the only one outstanding. That's Drainage District Number 2 is the only one outstanding. There's
We
no,
don't need
you
any
don't, you
motions
don't
on
vote.
these, okay? Thank you, Leslie. All right, item number 9 is discussion of possible action to approve the minutes of the January 21, 2019 regular meeting, January 22nd, 2019 special meeting, and the January 23rd, 2019 special meeting.
I'll move to approve.
I have a motion by Scott, second by Doug. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Correspondence. Doug, did you have any correspondence this week?
I didn't
Scott?
have anything.
I had nothing. Santos?
I had a meeting up in Des Moines for the Iowa Department of Human Rights, the Iowa Commission on International Affairs, and it was just to speak at the Des Moines Capitol for encouraging youth to get involved in politics. And then I had 1 call also that I referenced to Keith earlier in regards from a call from a constituent in West Liberty requesting how do we determine when we go from gravel to asphalt. I mentioned to Keith if he could get a minute to comment on that for us. How we determine from gravel to asphalt. Is there a formula we look at? Is there how many cars need to go by? Is there a budget constraint?
Yeah, and number 1 is budget constraint, and I had mentioned that virtually all counties already have more pavement than they can afford. It was built in a time, most of it was built in a time when the money was readily available. So there are rules with the DOT that we have to have at least 300 vehicles per day. If not, the board, first off, I mean, ultimately the board can do whatever the board wishes to do as far as paving a road. But if it's less than 300 vehicles per day, then the board has to hold a public hearing and establish the necessity to pave this. I believe quite a number of years ago, that number was 200, and it became 300 because people couldn't afford to pave above 200. We've probably got a lot of miles out there with 200-300 on rock that aren't paved.
And that's fine, I just didn't even have a number that I could reference to.
So
I just wanted to be able to share something with you.
we've had, in my time here, I know several times petitions to pave roads, but the board is not seen.
And that's fine.
And correct new paving at about $1 million a mile, it's just not feasible. It's kind of like, you know, we're not, financially, we're not keeping up with our bridges to keep our system up, so.
Good. I just wanted something that I could reference and something that I would
Yep.
ask, so I appreciate it. Thank
You
you,
bet.
Keith. Well, that's all I have.
Keith, does the DOT, do they publish, I know they do occasionally studies and they have, counts on roads. Is that published anywhere, do you know?
Yeah. The counts are on, the DOT has a map server. You just Google DOT maps, you can find it. Go to a county, you can see the city counts, the county counts. Those have also changed over the years, and they used to be more frequently and more detailed. Now about every 8 years do you get a more detailed traffic count. Every 4th year do you get an update that's not real detailed. Can't tell you, I don't recall exactly where we're at in the cycle, but you can see all the years of our maps and our traffic counts.
Okay, very good, thank you, Keith. Nancy, did you have anything for the board for correspondence?
No.
Committee reports. Santos, did you have any committee meetings? Okay, I had by-state executive committee and by-state commission on Wednesday of last week. They actually had maybe people haven't heard this, but they had the new commander of the Arsenal spoke, and the Arsenal, there's a lot of really interesting things going on with the Arsenal and happening up there. One of probably the most exciting that we heard about was the USDA, and I don't know how many people are familiar with this. The USDA is looking at moving all their offices out of Washington, D.C., and I believe the Arsenal has made the cut as to one of the primary considerations in the consideration. There's 2 different groups up there, one with 350 and the other with 250 employees, and this could be a really big pickup for the Quad City area. To me, thinking about it and looking at the agricultural center that the Quad Cities is, you know, I think all the agriculture, a lot of good percentage of it in the U.S. is in a few hundred miles of the Quad Cities radius. That it could be a really great move. So that's exciting. The Arsenal's just got a lot of things going, and they're encouraging people to come up and visit the Arsenal, see what else is quarters one in the golf course. They're looking at, they're pretty close to having approval to go out and look to put that under private contract, privately run, and get that more available to the public. So some kind of cool things happening up there. The last couple of commanders have been really trying to engage the community more. And they say they feel like with this, that the Arsenal is, they've done a lot of work with the bi-state people that they look at what puts you high on the list for getting additional commands or whatever at the Arsenal, and said what's been really positive in the Quad Cities is now they offer school choice. So they said that's one of their top 2 things are school choice for their families when they come in. And in the Arsenal, most of their other competitive arsenals have 1 school choice. In the Quad Cities, they have 6. And they said, so that votes really highly for people wanting to come in, because depending on what they're looking for in a school system, they can generally find it in the Quad Cities. So I thought that was all good, positive news.
Do they have existing facilities for this workforce?
Yeah, that was what was really a nice effort. And again, all the Quad City delegates are helping with this. So there's, I'll mention the other comment that would be nice for the Arsenal for them to be considered. So one was school choice, the other was licensure. If you can, like teachers, cosmetology, those type of professions, a lot of times military families have those as spouses, and they said if they had reciprocity in the Quad Cities on licensure for those type things, it would be very helpful for those. And between Iowa and Illinois, and I think that's something that as elected officials, we can talk to our delegates and say, hey, that would be a good thing, because the Arsenal provides a lot of jobs. So your question, Scott, was on the availability of buildings. That's one of the things where the Arsenal is in excellent shape. They have office space to the specification. They're in ready for all of those positions. They could take all positions in there now. And I think that's the attractive point. There would be no construction required. They have the parking, they have the facilities, and they meet the criteria. And that's where I think it's why I might misquote this, but I thought they were, you know, the short list was pretty real short on this, that they were one of just a couple of places under consideration that could meet it. And I think, you know, as a taxpayer, I think, you know, hey, if we've got a facility out there, you could facilitate this move, and you didn't have to build any facilities, that's a great thing.
Okay.
All right, that's all I had out of there. Scott, did you have anything?
I had the conservation board on Monday the 21st, and this was my first meeting back to that board, and just a general conversation about the, I'll call them cabins down at Deep Lakes. They had different sets of plans and pictures laid out on several tables, and the group had been kind of going over it and looking at what features they liked and didn't like for Upton County, but I know they're really working hard to get these all constructed and in place, and with the this is September that the County Conservation Conference is going to be held down here at the Merrill, and great participation as far as sign-up is concerned in that regard for people to come and attend this event. And so they're really working hard at getting these new different entities finished to showcase this off. They're pretty proud of the Deep Lakes Park, and they should be.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. That's all I had.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Doug, did you have anything?
We were supposed to meet for the fair board last Thursday and canceled that.
Yeah, the weather got everybody, didn't it? Okay, very good. Item number 12 is to receive information from county employees. Any county employees can you share with the board this morning? All right, if not, so items with the administration office. Item 13A is action to accept the January 2019 payroll claims.
So
Have a motion by Scott, second by Santos. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Item 13B is to review the health and dental fund balance as of December 31st, 2018.
And
Should
that's,
have been in all your packets. Any comments? Nancy, I see our balance has kind of been around and eroding a little bit. Are we, have we adjusted rates for the next budget year?
yes, we have adjusted budget rates for the next year, and I'm scheduled to get preliminary numbers from Wellmark next week or the week after that.
So we should be seeing them and having those conversations shortly?
Yep.
To me, it looks like the dental deposits have been hanging strong, but the health deposits were a little bit.
Yeah, the dental, the expenditures in those tend to do a pretty routine pattern. We have a few months where they shoot way up, but most months they run below what we're taking in. The health insurance, we're simply having another one of those periods where we're having
Significant.
above average number of people who are hitting that high claim mark, and we have a $75,000 stop loss gap. So once they hit 75,000, Wellmark pays for everything. But we've had, I believe, in the last year and a half, we've had 7 or 8 individuals that have hit that. So
Yeah, they're up there. I think our average 12-month is over 200, and we were running 160, so I just was a little concerned about our balance if we thought we were adequate. Okay. Any other discussion on that? Yeah, we don't need to approve, that's just a information item. Okay, so the next one, 13C, is a review the proposed FY 1920 county budget. So this morning you should have had on your desks, I think, the summary. Sherry gave us updates on the pages we decided, and really probably the most important one was the top end. I see on the levy rate, Sherry, we moved up a penny from what the estimate was on the actions once you got all the corrections and additions into the budget.
That was moving the 250,000 parking lot project and capital project, so.
Okay, yeah. So if there's any questions, discussions? I think this is just an informational item. We've got our public hearing scheduled and all that, correct?
Right,
Nancy?
this is just to show you the results of all the stuff that you talked about last week. And if there's no additional changes directed today, then I believe next week what you get is kind of what we call a final budget for publication, that you approve for publication. Do you wanna talk a little bit about the mental health, the 3 mental health options?
Oh, yeah, maybe this is the right time. And I would note that, you know, you are looking at a pretty substantial increase in the levy. We had talked about this a year ago when the board elected to eliminate our levy for mental health funds in order to draw down some of the funds we'd sent to the region. We did that, was about a 60-some cent reduction. Well, guess what, we gotta put it back in this year. I think we warned the taxpayers this was gonna happen. We didn't wanna do it, didn't wanna whipsaw it, but we had an opportunity we needed to draw down the region balance, and we didn't wanna spend funds that we didn't need, so the board did that. And this has been a challenging year with a lot of other things in the budget, so I think, you know, never happy, but we're gonna go up, I don't know, what's that, 82 cents, Sherry? 72 cents? Current proposal,
For mental health,
total,
82.
82, yeah, we'll go up 82 cents, which is pretty significant. But if you go back to this board has always, if you go back for 10 years, we've always stayed in that 10 to 1070 range per thousand, so we're still in that range. Hopefully we got the big hurdles behind us. Okay, Sherry, did you want to talk a little bit about the fund?
Mental health levy?
Yeah.
I think with the 1920 budget, the 311,275 requested payment from the region has not been included in our budget. Nathan had asked for the scenarios that he could provide the legislators, so that's the only reason you see this is, if we paid the region the $312,000 roughly at the end of 1920, we have a negative fund balance, about $127,000 negative fund balance. So the point is, there's no way we can afford to do that unless there's some services we don't provide in order to make that money available for the region. What was said last Monday was that we probably can't expect any reimbursement from the region. But you see a scenario where if there were dollars from the region to reimburse us, we would be looking at, in 1920, needing $125,000 from the region to maintain a 20% fund balance. Then 154, assuming expenditures and revenues are the same.
And this is irrelevant, or doesn't have the region fund balance
No,
factored into this.
county fund
So we don't know if they're at 20%, where they are. We know they did that one-time drawdown where they, you know, I think to most of our displeasure, they did that one-time funding request to draw down the region balance. So I think Nathan has said that they aren't gonna have 20% fund balance there either.
Right, that's what it kinda sounds
Which,
like.
so now we're back into the same pickle we were when we started regionalization, cause we're funding at the maximum allowed, right, per capita?
What we have in the budget is to levy the maximum available.
3070, which is $30.78 per thousand. So for those that may or may not recall, when this whole regionalization process started, it was calculated across the state of Iowa, we're spending 55 something per capita, $55 and something per capita on mental health services in the state of Iowa. So as you can see, by where we are now, and we're almost funding it, we're probably have seen some relief by regionalization. We've seen some cost savings and increased services. But the challenge is that we're not allowed to change our levy, our levy only to that per capita amount, and they want us to keep a 20% fund balance, and no more. So I think Mike Johansson, prior to his retirement, he said he thought the real number should have been out of the legislature around $36. And I, just doing the math here in my head, I'd say that looks like about right for us. So the legislature still has a lot of work to do to try to free up counties to work with their own tax levies to get the services. We'll see. They don't seem to have a lot of confidence in counties at this point. But, now, we don't know, because we know that the Scott County is still only levying $24, right?
I'm not sure, I know they're not levying maximum.
Yeah, so when they get to 30, that could draw excess dollars to the region that could be distributed to us, because we've already sent them plenty. We'll consider that a loan.
Does it appear that Scott County is going to raise theirs?
Well, when we don't send them any money for the region, they're gonna have to do something, because they're the ones that haven't been paying, and I'm pretty sure none of the other counties are gonna send any. And, you know, the message I think this board needs to send with Nathan is if they don't certify to the max this year, then we're gonna throw them off the island. That's what I think we do, because,
With approving the budget for publication next week, at the public hearing, you can always reduce, you can't increase at that point. So if something happened and you decided you did not want to levy the maximum amount of dollars, you could make that decision then.
yeah, I think the challenge for the board is we have to take care of our people, and we don't know whether or not the region's gonna be able to give us funding, because, of what they did. What happened at the region level, so we can't, I don't think we can count on it. I don't wanna hurt people in the county, so I think we have to, I don't think it's a choice. But I think that we do need to keep a watchful eye on what Scott County does, and then instead of threatening them, we need to go through it this time. If they do it again, once, shame on them. Twice, we look kinda stupid. My opinion.
Well, like we talked about previously, that's the downfall of this regionalization is if everybody contributed and had the same end goal in mind financially, theoretically it worked very well. But when you have a group that doesn't care to participate, it makes it difficult to operate the region.
Yep. Well, it was just unfortunate, so hopefully they'll get it together this year.
Sherry, when will we know if Scott County will plan on funding their mental health budget?
Well, they have to certify their budget on or before March 15th. So it depends on what their schedule looks like. So it could be a while before we can.
And ours is gonna be next week.
Next week, we will determine what we publish, what our notice of public hearing says for a hearing, which I believe is on March 5th. February.
Yep.
And we do it, we don't push it out to the deadline just in case there would be an issue or a protest that we can submit, because that's not a lot of time, but we don't have to wait till the last minute.
But, so if you look at this, the sheets, what you're telling us on this first sheet, Sherry, is that if we budget the maximum, the region, we get no help from the region, we're looking at $184,000 fund balance, which is less than the 20% that that the legislature says they want us to keep.
A little
So,
over half of it, then.
yeah, we're about 60% of where we should be.
Yep.
I think we're probably okay, but, to that point, Santos, I'm not comfortable doing any less than what we're allowed. because I think it'll
It'll
probably
really
get us there.
have to be there.
It'll get us there, but it's gonna be a problem. We can't carry it only 1 year. And then we just have to see what Scott County does, and we'll have to see where the region funds are. If they can, if they can push back enough to, if we did that and they could push us back 125,000, we could stay at our fund balance. So that'll show, but I like this picture because it points how it doesn't help that the region has to push back every year about 150,000 just to keep us where we need to be, right? For the next 3 years. And if we make a payment to the region, that's the third sheet, or I guess this is my third sheet, maybe, we're in the hole. 120, it doesn't make any sense to send money to them and then we're out of money, so that dog don't hunt.
Right. So that's why that's not included in our environmental health budget expenditures, because there's just no way we can.
I think this sheet
fund that.
does a good job for Nathan to show our position and why we're doing what we're doing to the rest of the boards. Do you know if we're planning, is that board planning to have a powwow like we did up in Macokota that
I
time?
haven't heard anything.
Another one?
All
Maybe.
I hear is Scott County, are they the only ones that aren't participating like they're supposed to?
Well, what happened is we started this whole process and there was a big discrepancy. Muscatine County was about $56 a thousand. Clinton and Jackson were both up well above that, way more. And Scott was at 19, okay? Well, they were grant funding out of the other pocket, so it was all a mess. So what happened was the legislature they didn't allow they allowed you not to move your rate. Well, you've got an imbalance already. And then so what wound up happening is they cut it down. We went along playing like we did, Clinton County, everybody, playing like good soldiers. And we sent money into, you can see over there, Sherry's got a nice summary of transfers to the region on the bottom of the left. So we'd sent about 3.2 million, 3.1 million to the region. And so initially what happened was the state understood there was a discrepancy and they grant funded to regions to get them started, big dollars. And that's what Scott County was using instead of levying. But it was kind of it was a mistake of drafting the legislation in my mind, because you had an imbalance, but you gave supervisors no ability to adjust their levies to get them in balance. I don't know how, all that you let them do was cut them. You wouldn't let them, you capped them, but you wouldn't let Scott County bring theirs up. So actually, at the time, Carol Earnhardt was the chair, and Carol worked really, really hard to get the legislation to allow us to do that. Well, she got a new board with her. They replaced, the taxpayers in the county probably replaced 3 or 4 of the supervisors that were a part of the original, when we talked about regionalization. And guess what? They decided they weren't gonna levy. And so they didn't change their levy, we went to 0. Clinton County went to 0. I think Cedar stayed. Dawn, yeah, I think Dawn she didn't want to have the political headaches. They gave something. They cut drastically, and I don't know what Jackson County did. I think they stayed. I think they contributed some, but Clinton County and Muscatine County both had contributed significant amounts to the region. I think between us about $5 or $6 million. The other two Cedar and Jackson hadn't done much because they were using all theirs anyway. And it was just bad. It was just, I understand why Scott County did it, because they saw that the region fund balance was gonna get too big. Again, the legislation gave you 2 years to cut it down, but they should have been talking to us, coming back and say, hey, let's reduce your levies, instead of having us pay it all again. They should have gone as high as they could have and let Muscatine and Clinton counties reduce their levies, and they chose not to. So this year we chose for them. And I intend to for the next several years until we get them where they need to be. Fair statement? kind of what happened. So it's pretty complicated, and the legislature owns most of the problems, but, so they're having, from reading the study group, Polk County, our region, are really the ones having all the problems. Because we have these, Polk County's it's a one county region, isn't it, Sherry? So there, it's like, you have these large urban areas that have typically well, it was caused originally by the fact that the legislature in 95, they redid mental health, and they capped the supervisor's ability to levy on dollars, not on a levy rate. And so as these population centers grew, they weren't able to get any more dollars, and their levy rate was artificially going down. Well, they were finding the money from elsewhere, and it just caused all kinds, instead of solving the real problem, they just pushed it off. And so hopefully they'll get it right this time. We're on round 3 of funding changes. Any other questions on this, comments, concerns? Okay.
Is there anything anybody wants to go back to or readdress in the budget?
I think we're good. Okay. Anything else, Nancy?
Nope, I don't have anything else.
Any board members have anything else? Okay, if not, meeting is adjourned.